Welcome back to the Burly Fishing Podcast. I'm Jeff Burlingame here with my co-host Paul Glass, and today, you guys, I'm kind of having a fanboy moment right now. I'm pretty pumped because we have an awesome guest. You may have heard of her. It's Kristine Fischer, aka at Midwest Fisher Gal. If you guys follow her on social media, she has a YouTube channel too. Kristine, how are you doing?
Hi guys. Well, I'm doing great. Can't complain. I've got a little bit of downtime in my crazy schedule with life, and it feels really good to have a little bit of downtime for once. So I'm freaking happy as a clam.
That's awesome. So excited. So you mentioned you're are you on vacation right now? Are you not tournament angling at this moment?
I am, yeah. It's really funny when people ask me, like if I'm on vacation. I feel like sometimes that my entire life is what people would consider a big giant vacation, but it's not. So technically, and with my full time on the road tournament fishing, I had a very rare moment where I had a 3-week break between tournaments, and
Wow.
I took myself on a legitimate, actual vacation. And yes, it was absolutely wonderful in every regard.
So here's the question. Where does Kristine Fischer go on actual real vacation?
Well, it all depends on the moon and the time of year, and if I can get into Canada or not, which we cannot right now. So I went to the North Woods up in northern Wisconsin and fished every single day, ate a ridiculous amount of banana peanut butter pancakes, and had just an incredible time being on the water every day. Smallmouth fishing, did a little muskie fishing, being up in the North Woods, very little cell service. I love to go where I can kind of disconnect.
No doubt.
Even on vacation, you go fishing.
I
love it.
I know.
I love it.
How much spotted cow though?
Oh man, Nuclearius. Wisconsin did it right by not allowing people to buy that outside of the state of Wisconsin because it creates such a demand. I currently have about 4 left in my cooler because I always bring some back home. So I still have a few with me, and probably going to try to raffle them off at my next tournament for like $20 a pop.
You'll get it.
I know.
You'll get
easily.
it.
Yep.
Easily.
In a heartbeat.
I was introduced to that, like, I think it was 3 years ago. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. It was the first time I was in Wisconsin. And I got to say, yeah, that's a fantastic brew. That's delicious.
It really is. Yeah, it's such an easy drink too. It really is.
Well, it tastes 10% better when you know you can't get it. Like that's the.
That's being generous. I was going to say about 30% better. It's just that exclusivity of the whole thing.
Inarguable. All right. So we have Kristine Fischer on. I'm also geeked to the max. We have a whole litany of fun stuff to talk about. But as we like to do, we like to start the episode off a little bit of fun. There's more than one way to meet somebody. I like to do a fun question, then we all get a chance to answer. And it's just a good way to kind of it's a nice lead in. So the episode question we've got, Kristine, one of my favorite posts that I kind of sometimes see on your Instagram is the music choices. Like I feel like you're hitting my soul. Like I think
really?
The most recent one that went up there was I can't remember if it was David Lee Murphy, maybe a little dust on the bottle.
Oh, I threw that one up a little while ago. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, and I was like, dude, yes, preach. And so I have to know if you were a music person, you're like, okay, it's tourney time. I need to get my mind right. I need to be psyched, but maybe not too psyched. Like I don't want to be over jazzed. Like I don't want to drink 6 cups of coffee. Maybe 4 cups of coffee.
Just 4.
What are if you're gonna have like any number of songs that you want, but like a couple of songs that are gonna like get you in the zone? What are some of those jams for you?
Gosh, so it's typically so dependent. It's music, so it's so dependent on your mood. But there are some that seem to keep like re-entering my pre-tournament playlist, and one of them, and I wish it wasn't so cliche because it's so popular now, but it didn't used to be, and that was Tyler Childers' White House Road. That's such a great pre-tournament jam. I love that one. Def Leppard, Animal.
Yes.
I have a
Yes.
pretty eclectic taste in music. Gosh, that's not even. I think Wicked Twisted Road by Reckless Kelly's usually up on there for a little more like just starting in the morning.
Wow.
Boy, there. I
You're
can't limit
walking.
my. I could. Yeah, I
You're
can't limit
walking down.
myself.
I have a playlist on. The only reason I have Spotify is because I made one playlist that I wanted to listen to in the middle of nowhere, and I knew like roughly 200 songs that I wanted on there. And if you heard that child, that was mine. I don't know if he fell. I don't know if he hit himself. That was loud. But
You
yeah.
just straight ran into it. What's up, dude? You
That's
podcasting?
unavoidable. If we start before 8, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, the only reason I have Spotify is because of this one playlist that I knew I need to make, and it's like 30% like classic rock, 30% like anything like country from like the 50s to like 70s, and then the remaining 40% is like a bunch of like fun country songs that are new that maybe aren't my favorite, but like if you're hanging out, like other people need to have some music that they want to hear.
Can relate to, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so like this is like everything you're talking about is like right at my like you could I feel like you could probably go down my list and you'd see every song and be like yup.
Yeah, gosh, yeah, I'm a huge music. I think probably because I couldn't play an instrument. I'm an awful singer, but I love music. I absolutely love it. Like going to these little dive bars or little like small town saloons and playing that jukebox and getting everyone all jacked up. Like I'm all about that. Music speaks to the soul for sure.
Especially if you're screaming in your car alone, then you're a great singer. And everybody
Yeah.
knows that.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter what, you're the best singer in
Without
that
a doubt.
car. If you
All right. So my next question is, how would you rate your hat game on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being not
One
wearing
hat.
any hats, don't wear them, can't wear them, don't know anything about them. 10 being always wear hats and everyone looks phenomenal.
12.
Oh,
Yep, I took it there. That's what happened.
Oh
The amount
man.
of
Because
hesitation
not
is
only do
zero.
I live in hats, my hat, I am not a stylish person by any means. And thank God that flannel I guess flannel is trending and stuff like that because now I'm in. But I think my hat fashion is extremely superior to anything that I've ever done. So I'm pretty proud of my hat wearing abilities and my hat selection.
Everything's
Hat,
just on
hat,
point.
hat wearing #1, tournament
Yep.
number 2.
Well, shoot, I am always in a ball cap. I mean, my fiance gives me so much crap because he loves seeing my hair down, and he's like, I get to see your hair down like once every year and a half.
Oh my
And
gosh.
usually when it's down, I'm still wearing a hat, and that's
Your
real. That is very real.
your hair
Very
is
real.
almost exclusive as New Glarus, and that may be what makes it like so enviable.
30% more.
There's a method to my madness here. The reason why I do this.
That's how you get to 12, folks.
I get Yep, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
That's glorious. A person behind my own heart. I have too many hats, says Paul. Not enough hats, says I. I showed him on a recent episode. I just have stacks and stacks of hats. So I can appreciate that. I love it. A 12 out of 10 people.
Yeah.
I love it. All right.
I took it there.
Well, and rightly so. All right. So now we kind of talked about this earlier, but I want to for those who don't know, Kristine Fischer, I'm gonna do your intro, sort of your professional kayak angler. I think that's is that how you would do your introduction?
Gosh, I probably not. People call me that, and I guess I do make a living fishing, kayak fishing, and doing the outdoors thing. But for me, like professional is I have that in such like an elitist mindset that I look at a professional fisherman, I consider a professional like an elite pro or an MLF pro that is in the top percent of that field. So I don't know if I would consider, I don't think that kayak fishing is quite there to where we can dub ourselves pros yet. But I'm pretty hard on that. So I'm not sure, guys, what I would really call myself.
I know. I kind of like set a trap there because what I actually have written down in my show notes is I have that you're a full-time kayak tournament angler?
I like that. That's actually, that is kind of what I am. I'm a full-time kayak angler, tournament angler, living on the road. Yeah, and I do some freelance writing on the side. I mean, I've always done that. I do some odd and end things here and there, but yeah, primarily I'm just a full-time fisherman. I guess let's just call it that.
You're welcome. Update your business cards. That's all we're saying.
Thank you. Gosh, how much do I owe you guys for that? Start
You know
me a
what?
tab now.
Help in
I
the
feel
house.
like okay.
Well,
Well,
we
I
have
appreciate that.
many
Very
more
generous.
things to charge you for later. Don't worry about it.
I figured. All right, let's start running that tab.
Every episode we make comes with at least one game changer and one $1 million idea. So just stay tuned. It might happen.
Not even
That's
joking.
Great, I like that.
I've had to edit out so many $1 million ideas because
So
sometimes
many
I put
ideas.
2 or 3 in there, and I'm like, there can only be one per episode. All right.
Wow.
So I kind of have a lightning round of questions because Kristine has done a fair amount of podcasts before. She's definitely probably one of our most experienced guests when it comes to that. She has a really unique background, one that is, I think, a phenomenal story, but I will be honest, it's one that's out there and has been told by some people, and I think it is really, really valuable. It definitely drives a ton of insight into kind of what she's doing today. And I want to give you a little bit of flair for kind of how she got to where she got to, so we can do a little bit of a get to know you. But at the same time, I kind of want to talk about where you are today. So I'm going to do, instead of doing the deep probing questions, I want to kind of do like the lightning round. Like I'm just going to hit you with a couple questions. We'll do like the 5-second version, and then I will leave it up to listeners if you really want to dive deep and get to know Kristine a little bit better. Definitely go check out some of the other work that she's done with some other folks. There's some great podcasts out there. I think Salt Strong is one that was a little more recent, but there's a bunch out there. So if you're cool, I'm gonna hit you with the questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
This one's hard. Probably gonna need a lot of time to think about it. Where are you from?
Boy, let's see. Let's rack the brain here. I was born and raised in Weeping Water, Nebraska, a town of 800 people nestled in a little valley outside Omaha and Lincoln, about 45 minutes.
Wow, that
Huge
came out
town.
a lot
Huge
faster than I thought.
Yep, little town.
That is awesome. So what are kind of, how did you get introduced to the outdoors? It's definitely part of your kind of your persona. Was that something that you were kind of raised in, or was that something you kind of introduced yourself into?
So long story short, I was very fortunate to have been born into a very outdoors oriented family. If you were to sit in my parents' house, or my grandparents' house, which they happen to share a driveway with my parents in our little town here, you'd see the decor, the family pictures, everything is fishing oriented. All of it. Fishing is always brought up in conversation. It was just a huge way of life for us. I grew up without a television, so my brother and I, the outdoors was kind of our other option. My parents, actually, little side tangent, very quick. Before I was born, my mom and dad wanted to live on a boat and raise and homeschool us and go up and down the rivers and intercoastals and raise us on a boat. So I would have been way cooler if that would have happened. But that gives you a little insight into my family, if that tells you anything. So,
oh my gosh, that's so amazing. We just saw a houseboat this past weekend when we were camping, and I was like, Paul, why didn't we do
right?
that?
We didn't invest properly.
We made mistakes.
Trust
Dude
me,
was out
I'm
there.
mad at my parents all the time for not actually following through with that dream.
Touche. This dude was out like in the middle of a chain of lakes with his dog, and he had a diving board off the back of his houseboat, and he was legit just like eating lunch, sitting on the diving board, kicking his feet, and his dog's like paddling around the whole place. And I'm like, yeah, we screwed up. We didn't do it right.
Life decisions, guy. Hey, it's never too late. Never too late.
It's not. We can do that now.
Good point. My wife's going to be listening to this and get me very upset.
Honey, I sold the house. Don't worry. I got a boat. It's a house.
So what kind of fishing did you do when you grew up? Was it bass all the time? I kind of already know the answer to this, so I feel like this isn't genuine. But what kind of
people?
It's for the people. So we know you as a bass fisher woman. So what kind of did you grow up bass fishing?
All right. So everybody does kind of know me as, the bass gal now, at least for tournaments, but that's not what I grew up doing. we grew up going to the North Woods, and South Dakota, and we traveled all over the country, Colorado, and fishing all over the place. But predominantly, what we did was we fished for pike and walleye, and perch, and we actually fished family walleye tournaments. I remember fishing tournaments with my dad and grandpa and mom and little brother. We'd split up my family's got like 30 boats. That's not even an exaggeration.
Wow.
So we'd split up in some of our, now they're not nice boats by any means, but we take pride in our boat collection.
Floating vessels.
They're floating vessels. And each one of them has its own characteristics and attitudes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we grew up doing that. And, of course I do the Nebraska farm pond thing. Grandpa would take it to this pond and we catch largemouth and stuff on frogs and whatnot. But most of my fishing growing up was walleye and pike. And I was a huge pike fan. That's all I wanted to do was pike fish.
We're fist pumping big time.
Yeah, that was my favorite. So you can walk down. We have a little cabin out in the sandhills, and you can walk down the halls. And there are these pictures from when I was a 2-year-old, 3-year-old holding, Tullaby and fish up north. And I think I was like 4 or 5 when I had a pike in both of my hands. It's dripping over my hands. And it was a huge way of life for me. I was just really, really fortunate to have been brought into a family that was so outdoors oriented.
Yeah. And I think, the reason I think it's important for people to kind of hear about, like part of what I've kind of heard about your story before is how your family is, very entrepreneurial based. Really self-starters, grinders, and it kind of led you to doing some of the maybe like non-traditional things. Like, can you, I guess my next lightning round question would be like, talk to me about your kind of like your school experience and how it maybe was kind of the beginning of what was maybe a little bit different than some what other people, went through and kind of think of as like the track that you're supposed to be on in life.
Right. So you said it right there. My entire family, from my grandpa to my dad and everybody else, they're all entrepreneurs. My family has a small business and just always did things differently than everybody else. And I didn't fall far from the tree with that. I remember in school, I got in a lot of trouble in school because I was very smart. I was almost too smart for my own good, but I asked a lot of questions and I was bored. I was really bored. I didn't feel like, this is a typical teenage answer, but I didn't feel like being in school was really doing me any good because I didn't feel like I was really bettering myself in any capacity, though I was. School is obviously a good thing. Don't, kids out there stay in school. But when my guidance counselor would say, what are you going to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to go into school? I was the kid who, there are so many that are so driven and know exactly what they want to do, and that's great. But I was a dreamer. I was somebody that believed I could do anything I wanted to, and why should I be limited to one thing or another? And at the same time, I had no freaking idea what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything that I was told I should do, or anything that I was good at. I had a lot of skill sets that I was told I'd be a good lawyer, I'd be a good doctor, I'd be I'd be great in sales, I'd be phenomenal in sales. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do any of that at all. Actually, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I went to school and got a volleyball scholarship and an academic scholarship. Did that for a year, but got really tired of having games every weekend. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see more of the country. I was, kind of a little gypsy, I guess, in some regard. And so I ended up taking online classes at several different colleges, and I was traveling every free second that I had between a bartending job and a waiting tables job. And a classroom setting wasn't for me, and I still had no idea what I wanted to do. But through all of that, I kind of ended up getting my first, what I would call a corporate oriented job, working at a sporting goods store, Shields. I was the hunting manager for 5 years up there. And though I loved what I did because it brought me back to the outdoors, and I was able to work, I was the only female up in hard goods, and which was pretty typical for me. As you can probably tell, I was a textbook tomboy, and my best friends, a lot of them were all guys growing up. So I was back in a male dominated workplace and loved it, loved working on bows, loved getting back into talking fishing and guns and all of these things. But I still wasn't, it wasn't what I wanted to do. My store leader was frustrated with me because I was in the assistant store leader program, and I was one of the first people that quit that program. And apparently you don't quit that program. That's the next step. And I said, no, I don't want to do this. And that kind of put me on a blacklist there with them a little bit. But the rest of my managers all loved me, and they just knew that I wasn't wired that way. I wasn't wired to follow a textbook of rules and regulations without questioning the system and punching a time clock. So I, found an outlet teaching Pilates, and I didn't know what Pilates was, but I said, okay, I can make my own schedule. I could go and continue to travel and hunt and fish whenever I want to. Sure, I'll go and pay X amount of money, get certified, and teach pilots or whatever you called it. And I did that for 5 years. Yes. And it was, but I actually ended up loving that career. I loved what I did there. I helped a lot of people, made some amazing relationships with my clients, and truly loved what I did and got to be very good at it. But I had no idea what it was until I went and got certified, just because I wanted the freedom, selfishly. But after that, I started fishing tournaments when I was doing Pilates, and I started traveling to national tournaments, and I started having success. And all the while I taught Pilates, I still bartended. I still was a freelance writer for several outdoor companies. I was also guiding kayak fishing trips, and I was guiding ice fishing trips, and I was guiding spring turkey hunts as well over the years. So I did all kinds of things. And I finally, got to the point where I thought I was able to quit and go full time on the road with my fiance. And it was scary, very scary at first, because I had always, done pretty well for myself and had things pretty figured out financially. I was going to pay my house off that I just bought in 5 years. And I was like, shoot, I'm going to quit my main source of income and try to stay on this track. I just had to kind of take that leap. And for the first 6 months, it was really hard. Really, really hard. I felt very unsure of my future and very lost. And I can see how a lot of people quit because that security and that comfort blanket is ripped from you. And there were times in that first 6 to 8 months where I didn't think I could do it. And I wanted to, find some stability and get a full-time deal going, but I just kept pushing and kept pushing and kept pushing. And a year and a half later, here we are, and I'm making it happen. I've been very fortunate the last 2 years.
Kristine, I can tell that you're an amazing podcast guest, because you just offered me like so many unbelievable transition opportunities that I could we could go absolutely anywhere. So congratulations.
Cool.
Congratulations.
On being phenomenal.
Congratulations.
I'm being
awesome.
11 out of 10 as a podcast guest. So
not quite 12 yet, though.
Oh, we're not even halfway through. We're not even halfway through.
We got time to level up.
I'm a high achiever, so.
I'm giving you room to grow.
Okay.
She's got to reach that hat game level.
Exactly. So, you talk. I think you just hit on one of the things that I think is really neat about kind of your story and where you are and what you're doing, that I think a lot of people connect with. And you talked about how scary it is to kind of remove that safety blanket and do something that, we kind of talked about where kayak angling is, and you can't really call it professional because it like sort of barely exists right now. It's still very, very new, and it's happened so quickly. Like if you went back 5 years, you look at the Hobie.
Relevant.
You look at the Hobies that you were fishing in compared to like the PA360 or like the old towns that are coming out, and it's like those are spaceships.
Yep.
And so, I know I've seen some of your writing and some of your references. You talk about how fear plays like a big part of you sort of going with the white picket fence lifestyle and really kind of making your choices about like safety versus like going after what you really want.
Yeah.
How did you talked about, like you said, I just kept pushing, like I just kept driving, like what made you sort of continue down the path less traveled instead of, looking at the situation and be like, I make great money, I'm pretty happy. Like it's not like you were in a bad place, that you were like running from something. So like what kind of helped you overcome that fear and just keep on driving to get to kind of where you are today?
Well, a couple of things, and there's a Thoreau quote out there that reads, "Most men lead lives of quiet desperation," and that is a really powerful. There's a lot. That's a multi-faced quote that you can really dissect and get into, and there's a lot of truth to it. A lot of people aren't happy, and where happiness is fleeting, it comes and it goes, and you should never base anything off of happiness. I I looked at that and I wanted to find that, I wanted to find a life, a passion, something that I could do every single day and cultivate this joy in what I was doing and feel like I had a purpose in all of this. Because that's what we all want at the end of the day, right? None of us really want to, you know, go through the motions in life without really realizing our full potential and what we can do, and more importantly, what we can do for others and how we can impact others. And that alone right there was enough for me to keep pushing past the fears and the doubts. And when I really looked at it, though, my fears and doubts were minuscule compared to everybody else's that said I can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or it's not smart. I had to drown out the outside voices and listen to me. That was what's most important, was drowning everybody else out, everyone that said you can't do this, this is not how you are supposed to live, not how you can live, it's not ideal, it's not this. And they gave me all these reasons why it wouldn't work, and I had to really quiet those voices and listen to me, and to what I wanted and what I knew I was capable of, and just focus on that life that I knew I wanted to live. And for me, it's like, I remember my grandpa sat me down and my dad, and they literally instilled in me that I could do whatever it was in this world that I wanted to do, no matter what, no matter the obstacle. And, we didn't have any money growing up, so it wasn't anything about that. It was just, I felt that I was wired a little differently than a lot of people. And I really felt that I could do anything. And I kept pushing and trying to get this whole thing that we call life figured out. And, you can't quit. That's the biggest thing. You just can't quit. You got to listen. If you really want something, you've got to listen to yourself, and you have to go for it. That was a long-winded version of what I was trying to say, but I think you get the point.
Oh, I think it was
great.
accurately winded.
Okay.
Accurately winded. That's such a good term.
Sometimes I nail it. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, I know what I was trying to say there, and I'm not sure that I captured it. But I tried.
Well, that was fantastic. It seems to me like, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but if somebody tells you can't do something, you're the type to say, yes, I can, and then go harder.
It's both a blessing and a curse, because there were times when I wish that I had no business doing some things I did, but people told me I couldn't, and I said, watch me. And that it was not a stubbornness. I'm trying to find a healthy balance there between all of that.
I gotcha.
One of the things that I keep hearing, and I think again, is there's some qualities in people, I think especially in social media, that they're really easy to latch onto. And I think people latch onto certain things like without even knowing it. And one of them is kind of like the broader umbrella of like authenticity, which I think is kind of your calling card. And then, the thing that keeps coming up is you're like, well, I have to listen to like me and drown out other people. I'm not trying to make them happy. I'm trying to make myself happy. And you're talking about, I'm trying to find that balance between, being stubborn, but then like being driven. And I don't think you can do any of those things if you're not like an incredibly self-aware person. And I think, you seem to be like incredibly self-aware. Like you can take a pulse on where you are and then like react accordingly, and kind of, take, read your emotions and just know what to do next. Then that's going to be a good decision for yourself. And I think you can hear it in your story. You can read it in the posts that when you post on Instagram. You can hear it in your YouTube videos. So I guess my question is like, how much of that self-awareness kind of opens, makes you aware of like the platform you have, not only as like a successful angler, but as like a successful, female angler, and kind of not like drives you to do more with the platform than maybe what you could be doing with it, and then what a lot of other people end up doing with, like not just the fame, but like the reach that they have.
that is something that I also feel very differently about than I think the majority. I never got into this for money or fame, and I think I truly believe that not necessarily like money is the root of all evil or fame or power is the root of all evil, but the love of it is, and I do believe in that. And I think that being aware, I still have a hard time looking at myself as somebody with any type of, it was hard for me to look at myself as someone with influence, and that someone that people watched and looked up to and followed. That's kind of a mind-blowing thing for me. And as I'm kind of reaching these levels of where people are recognizing me on places that I go, it makes me really want to hold myself accountable and really make sure that I stay very true to who I am. And I've done a really good job of that through all of this, and through, choosing who I partner with, who I work with, not making it about money, making it about my values and what I want to stand for. And you said it, I mean, authenticity is everything to me. There's so much of it out there that's not real, and an overwhelming amount that's not real. And I think that's really, really sad, in a lot of capacities. And when I have this younger audience, especially that I know is looking at me for an example, it really is important to me to be myself and to hold true to everything, even though I do things so differently than a lot of people do. And it's definitely much more difficult to quote unquote make it doing things the way I'm doing. There's no doubt about that. But I tell you, I sleep so good at night knowing that I'm myself in everything that I'm doing. My mistakes are my own, my success is my own, all of it.
That's really well said. Like that is something that Paul and I are really big on. And like a lot of the people we've had on the show, we've noticed are very authentic. Like I appreciate that so much in a world that's, kind of filled with a lot of inauthenticity. Things
so much. It's inundated with, you look everywhere and there are these ads now of people, and I read the captions and I look at this stuff and I'm just like,
what?
Oh boy.
Do you get the creepy crawlies? Like my skin
Yeah,
crawls
makes
sometimes.
yeah, and I'm like, and that's why I'll never, be rich off of fishing, because I will never do that ever.
Yeah.
But I can make a very humble living off of it for the time being and get all my ducks in a row, so I can make a living with other things that I'm working on as well. So yeah, it's the authenticity thing is, my goodness, I can't even, that we'd have to have a 10-hour podcast that we could dissect and dive into all the flaws with the social media world with that.
And well, we'd love to do it.
Oh, absolutely. This is
an episode for sure.
This is why I wanted to get to the good stuff, because I think this is why people are kind of drawn to, like, why this is kind of why you have the reach that you do, is because I think the best example of your authenticity is one that like just popped up, like somebody, like some bot or like some like female person who had like a bikini on their photo, like was like, hey, what's up, or I want to partner or something.
I'm bored. Want to chat?
Yeah, I'm bored. I want to chat. And you're like, man, if you were doing what I was doing, based on your profile picture, you'd have like a gazillion sponsors this week. Like,
yeah.
Yes. And it's like, nobody does that. Like,
but
it needs to be said. Like, I know, like, I am not a social media person, but like every time I'm on Instagram and someone's like friending me and like sends me the kiss emoji, I'm like, this is why I don't like doing this, because it's ridiculous. But I think that's why people gravitate towards you. And I think you can really tell based off the sponsors that you're working with. I think St. Croix is like a really, really good example. They do such a nice job with the voice that they have, and it is so, you can tell it's authentic and like everything that they do, and it has it meshes very nicely with what it is that you do. And I guess my question around that is, like, how do you, obviously there's a difficulty with being yourself all the time, but I think what makes it doubly hard is you're in an industry where, I think more than a lot of other industries, fishing, because of the margins and the fact that there are really only white men in it, and there's like a generational piece to it too, where they're in a big transition phase where like a huge portion of their population is sort of like getting to the point where they don't fish as much. Like, it's a marketing engine at the core
Mm-hmm.
of it. So like how do you kind of navigate being authentic and being yourself in an industry that is like almost to its core most of the time inauthentic, to Jeff's point?
Well, that's an absolutely fantastic question, and one that I honestly haven't ever got on a podcast before. So, um, here's how I'm going to answer that. It For years and years, I've been in the industry for quite a while now. Even only fully in industry for 3 or 4 years, but loosely for years, right? And I've kind of seen how this has all gone. And I've seen how there is a lot of those issues there, and how companies, um, in order to reach, they feel like in order to reach a certain demographic, they have to have a more diverse representation of their brand, right? And for a long time, it just seemed like there was no vetting. People were so desperate to get away from that, just old white man on pro staff, and they wanted to get, there's for years any female that even had a
Huntress.
remote. Yeah, thank you. Yep, you said it. That covered a lot of what I needed to say. Yeah, any female that went out and held the picture of a fish was sponsored next day by 10 companies. And those that had a huge following were sponsored by even more. No matter what their credentials or even basic knowledge of the sport was, it didn't matter. And I knew that, and I knew there were certain ways that I could have marketed myself to have a huge following very quickly. I learned that with one of my first pictures on social media that received 10 times the amount of likes than the rest of them did. And as soon as I saw that, I was disgusted and never decided to market. I didn't even know. I was so naive at this that was a thing. And I decided not to ever do that again, because I didn't want that type of a following at all. For one, my grandma's on social media, and I don't want her to see those comments on my stuff. But luckily, the last year or two, this is a huge thing, and I just had a conversation with a potential sponsor a few hours ago about this, and they reached out, and now more than ever, these companies, these larger, very reputable companies within the fishing industry. I don't know. I can't speak on the hunting side, as I don't mess with it. I removed myself from that years ago for some of the same reasons we're talking about now. But they're starting to truly want to find a legitimate, and when I say legitimate, I mean that's so loosely thrown around, because you could say that just by looking at pictures that someone's legitimate. Somebody that could go and actually teach a seminar on something, that can go out and skip docks and work several different techniques and talk about it, and talk about why a medium light rod or a mod or a heavy mod fast rod for cranking, as opposed to like a heavy extra fast tip. Why would you want a softer tip for this? Someone that could actually dive into every realm of the fishing world and confidently and competently talk about it. Now more than ever, these companies are wanting women that can do that, actual pros. Because when you talk about a pros are people that get paid to do seminars, that get paid to get up there on the bass tank and walk a walking bait and talk about why they like this bait and so far. And I think that for me, that was the best news. That's why I'm having such a great few years, is that that doesn't really exist, sadly. There aren't a lot of women that can do that. There's just plain and simple, there's not. And I hate to be blunt about that. I fish with a lot of gals. There are some good anglers out there and people that are pretty self-sufficient, but there are not a lot of them that can do it all. And the industry is looking for them, and they're just desperate for them. So someone like me, remaining very authentic and very true to myself, and having luckily the knowledge that I've possessed over the years is finally paying off, and I am in demand. Women that are out there winning tournaments and being successful out there in the field, and that are well spoken and that can represent their companies well. It now is the best time than ever. You don't have to go out there in a eeny beanie weenie bikini and get on a guide boat and straddle it and hold up these fish and get these hundreds of thousands of followers. You don't have to do that.
Oh, man.
And I feel like for the first time ever, the fishing industry is truly starting to vet and to look for very credible women to represent them. And to not only do that, but to like give input and feedback. Like I want to help design rods and baits, and that's never really happened before with any other females out there. And it's time for it. I think it's long overdue. So it's a really exciting time in the fishing world for me, especially. I mean, it's like the light is shining down, and it's like finally. I don't have a huge following at all by any means. You know, I've slowly built mine up to something, but I know what I'm talking about. And, you know, the tournament wins and the success there the last 4 or 5 years have really helped the right people in the industry see a need in that. And I've been really, really fortunate with that realization.
Yeah, when you just said, this is totally a tangent, but when you said, like when I first got on Instagram and I was seeing like I don't know how they know who I am, like that I'm like a white male, but they market me like I'm a certain type of person, and I was getting floods of like women in bikinis holding up like bleeding fish that I could tell were still alive on guided charter boats, and I was like, this is quite literally one of the last things like that I've ever wanted to see. Like that for me, that very specific thing when I see like women like anybody holding up like live fish for like any longer than is necessary, that like
oh gosh,
that gets me in a place where I get like very irrationally upset. Maybe it's not irrational, I don't know, I get very upset, but regardless, thank you for saying that.
You get
stay
very,
tuned for
very
my next
upset.
post. It's my next rant post is coming. It's going to be a picture.
Ooh.
What's it worth?
You'll get a comment from me for sure.
You're gonna get all the comments.
It just hurts.
Yeah, I've witnessed some things that are not just the bikini people on the charter boats. I've witnessed some freshwater, some things that are just absolutely not tolerable. So stay tuned.
People may not understand about muskies, not to handle them, and some other things like that. But yeah, that's ignorance.
That's kind of the problem too, though. Is like, but then they see, you know, bikini girl fishing, or they see, you know, random dude bro fishing, and they're catching muskies, and they're like, I'm gonna go catch muskies. I'm gonna catch them with a Lego brick with the treble tied onto it, you know. And then they mistreat the fish, and this is something. That's very frustrating, and I agree with you. The bikini stuff popped up on my Instagram too, like.
It pops up on mine. How would it pop up on mine?
What is up? Instagram.
What is happening?
Zuckerberg, you don't know what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
There's a gap in the programming. Well, I think it's really great that, I mean, you said a lot of stuff that just erases half my questions, because I think you answered a ton of them. And I agree. I think there's this really, you know, part of it's what's going on with like within the BLM movement. And I think people of color are recognizing that they are misrepresented, and in most cases completely underrepresented, not only in fishing, but hunting is, to me, it feels like from a culture standpoint, is like 10 years behind fishing. I think fishing from a social media standpoint is way further along. You can see it on YouTube, I think, in a big way. And I think also in just like the culture of the business.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, hunting is much further behind, without a doubt.
Yeah, but there is this movement where I think, you know, people of color are starting to break in, and women are starting to break into the industry, to your point, because the industry has recognized, like, I have siloed myself off from like 60% of the population. Like, I know I got the big chunk, and that's great, but like, at some point companies have to, grow or fade. And I guess the question first of all, I do not mean to like make you feel like you're speaking for all women, but I think you have a unique perspective because you are in the industry and you've made it yourself, and you are one of the few women to do it in the way that you've done it, which is to mean you've been very authentic, and you've done it as like a pro's pro. And so I think I'd like people to hear your perception, because you are on the inside compared to where most people are. And so, when you're talking to St. Croix or Plano or Hobie or, whoever it happens to be, how do you, for whether you should have to be or not, how do you sort of guide those companies to say, look, you shouldn't just market in this way, because what you're doing is you're marketing it as though you're like a 40 to 35 to 45-year-old white male, what you think of, a 25-year-old female wants to be, advertise to in this way, and you're making products to them in a way that you think that they want, not necessarily how they want it. So how do you kind of, it's a kind of a subtle difference, right? But but it's everything.
Most definitely is. Yeah, you're correct. So do you guys watch The Office at all? Have you seen The Office?
Do I watch The Office?
So you mentioned I never had a TV. The only thing I literally have ever watched is The Office, and I love it. I'm a huge
straight
Office
home
fan.
run.
Okay,
Nice.
cool. So do you remember the scene where Angela's married to the senator, and she just found out about he and Oscar's affair, and they go over to that big press deal, and the guy is getting ready for a huge group photo. And the guy's okay, we're gonna grab this old person, and hey, you Hispanic guy, come over here. So they're taking all these different people and just posing them in this big picture. Do you remember now you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yep.
And they threw them in there so they could appeal and reach all of the demographics. And so I think when I talk to these companies, I remember that, and there's a way to market, but you can't make it look like you're just using a person of color or a female in this ad just so you cover your bases. You know what I mean? Yeah, it is. And I think there's a lot of companies that kind of abuse that a little bit, and it's almost obvious. It's very it has to be authentic, and it has to be natural. And so when I try to talk to the companies about it, I'm saying, look, talk to these women, these people, find people that you want to, everything has to be organic. And I say that, and so much of it isn't. So I'm not sure if I'm ever going to break through anything with that, but I always keep that in mind. And I try to at least convey it and my sponsors do a great job. That's why I'm with them, because I believe in who they are as a company and what they stand for. But even with St. Croix, their women's line and their rods, I'm like, a lot of women don't really care about having a pink or whatever that Avid Pearl was, that rod. They don't really care about that. And and for me, I don't need a smaller, reel seat or a foregrip. I don't need any of that. Yeah. I just give me a freaking functional rod. That's all I care about. Talk to women, like understand, this is one of the things though, where it's like, we don't really need anything different. Is it when it comes to gear? My hands may be a little bit smaller, but that doesn't change the fact that I still want this size, the same size reel. I still use all of this. So I think that it's all about having that conversation and understanding. But then again, I'm speaking for myself, and I'm a maybe the larger percentage of women out there do like to have something different. I'm wired a little differently than a lot of women out there, so I probably would not be a great representation of women in the industry, sadly.
Yeah. But I think what you're talking about is the difference between sitting in a room full of people like you and drawing up an ad for someone who's not like you, and talking to the person that you really want to get on board and finding out how they want to be spoken to.
Right.
It's like, I'm not going to write an ad for someone who's going into retirement. I have no idea at all how to do that. I have nothing. I have nothing to offer. Zero authenticity to offer whatsoever. And so it's like,
right.
I think it's helping people realize that, there's a
but do you want to reach the serious, because let's be honest here, the percentage of the diehard, competitive driven women out there in the fishing industry, it probably is very small compared to the amount of women who are recreational anglers. So in your advertising, when I would look at advertising, I want that fierce, bold, completely independent gal on her own boat, flipping reeds or something with, full buff sunglasses that cover all the way back to the eyes, like an actual functional, legitimate advertising deal. Do other women want that though? I mean, is that realistic for them?
I don't know the answer to the question, but
I don't either.
asking the question is where you start, right? It's like
those conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, first and foremost, as a person who is an angler, do I want to buy something that someone who's really proficient uses, or do I want to buy something that is cheaper and probably won't work as good as the thing that someone who's really good uses. I mean,
Right, but
Yeah.
what if it looks sweet? What if
Yeah,
it's got
well-
flames on it? Because that's how the industry works.
Right.
So
But it's like,
I'm just-
you want to give somebody something to aspire to. And so I think it's really important you can have both ends of the spectrum. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I think the problem is where, again, you end up designing something authentic and having an inauthentic message when you just make the assumption and do it without having your core audience do it. Like, I think people have a hard time hearing that, like, we need to have more women and people of color like making these decisions, which means hiring those people, which means putting them in positions where they're able to do things. They have a
Big
perspective.
changes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's not, and I think some people are gonna say like, well, you're just doing that to check a box. I'm like, no, I'm doing that so that when I make a commercial, it's a kick-ass commercial that person wants to see, not I think is cool, because it doesn't help
Yes,
me
and
if I think it's cool.
you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And that's where it comes back to the office thing and just grabbing people and throwing them in. That never is going to sell. Having people actually be in charge and putting their input in, and and having their perception is where it starts. You're right. Hit the nail on the head with that.
There's a
But
pink.
I think too, like, you are having a big impact. A minute ago there, Kristine, you said, like, I don't know if I'll ever get through to them, but to Paul's point, like, I think it's great that these conversations are starting, and I think that a lot of us are noticing in society, as mad as everything else is that's going on, at least these questions are being posed more, these conversations are being had more, people are becoming more conscious of it. You just had a call with a potential sponsor that they seem to be leaning that way, so I think it is really cool to see that, like, start happening, even though unfortunately, like, hunting's so much further behind fishing. Like,
Yep.
maybe things will
Yep.
catch up eventually, but it's good that we're
Probably
moving
not.
in that direction. Yeah,
Probably
Yeah.
not.
Probably not. Yeah, see, I'm a glass half empty with that deal.
yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's what it's going to take too is that women have to be competent and confident in what they want and what they know and what they're asking. I want, like I said, it's very important to me that I want to say in designing future rods, I want to design a bait. I want to have input in this. And you don't really see you don't see any of that from a lot of women out there. Trait does a little bit of, has had a little bit of that with a rod that she's done. And I think that having women of that ability push the needle and, being able to have the confidence and the whatever it is to say to a company and to the sponsors, like, look, this is what I want to see, and this is what I want to be a part of helping redesign or design, and this is what seems to be different about this. I'm very vocal about that with my sponsors. I'll call Chris Russell all the time at Plano and say, okay, this was great, this sucked, we've got to fix this, and here's why. And I think that's a really important thing for more women and on the sponsored level to be able to communicate with their sponsors as to why they like this, why they don't, what they want to see. That's another step in the right direction.
And I think that you're inspiring plenty of other women to do that. I think them looking to you and your authenticity, really shining through on all your posts, and you saying that here on this podcast, like, more people just need to hear that. They need to see that. And then other competent women in the industry can, rise to that challenge, and we can start pushing the industry forward where it needs to go. Right.
Right. Yep. That is the ultimate goal for sure.
Well,
Awesome.
One of the, Jeff kind of said it, is like you're kind of like posting these things, and it sounds so, like, I mean, I guess maybe it is trivial in a lot of ways, like, to you, but I think your posts of being like, yo, I just nabbed this, like, 45 plus inch muskie from this tiny piece of plastic that I'm floating on. People look at that and, like, a grip or grin is worth 1,000 words, especially when you're like, I mean, I think people gravitate towards, seeing big fish in kayaks, right? And I mean, you're over here, you're like barely in the seat half the time, in like full overalls and, like, hammering like 5+ pound smallies on St. Clair, and, like, you could post 1 billion of these a day, and people seeing you stand up on the on the podium, grabbing checks, like, that's half of it. I think Jeff's point, like. And I think the other half of it, it's just like, it is through and through legit. And it's like, people get to see that like you're not just the bikini type, because you're putting posts about there about like your post of you catching your PB like bass, like that level of screaming, that only I think that only
Yes.
happens when I do stuff like
Oh
that.
no,
Like,
We thought we were the only ones.
I was out on the water like 2 days ago and I missed a huge fish. I still don't even know what it was, but I know it was dragging me down. And the lure popped out, almost smacked me in the face, and I screamed so loud. Some dude, like probably over 500 yards away in his house, was like, "What'd you lose?"
At least. We
Oh
both did
my
that. Like
gosh.
I lost a big bass at the boat. I screamed and it was 20-mile-an-hour winds and you heard me and you were like up the channel. Like,
Ugh.
yeah.
I think when people see that, and then they see you posting videos, like I'll never forget like that video you posted of AJ dropping his sunglasses and like snatching them out of the water. Dude, like,
Why was that so popular? I mean, AJ's like, I'm the celebrity here. And I was like,
Okay.
why do people love
Accurate.
that video?
I'll
Yeah.
tell you what is about that video, because I've done that and I think it's hilarious. Like,
Yep.
why-
Yep.
it's because it's an authentic moment. It's like when you caught that catfish and you were like, I thought I was just about to rail this tournament or whatever, and then I reel in this catfish. Like, we've all been there, and those are things
It's
that
relatable, huh?
it's so easy to connect with, and you're not doing it like it's not difficult for you to do because you're living on the road, right? You are chasing a dream, and so it's not only it's something that is, a lot of people see that as something that, like, in a lot of different ways in their lives they probably want to do but are not doing. And when they're seeing somebody who's a real person who, like, I think you had a post a little while ago about like just a bunch of times that you were just like not proud of yourself. You're like, I got super frustrated in this moment. Like, here's a video of it. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make it onto posts. Like, it just doesn't. It does not make it into social media for people who are
Everybody
trying to
else
make it.
everybody else deletes those.
All cultivated.
But
And
those are so huge because I think
They're,
that too,
yeah, for sure.
that's like bringing you that audience that would stay with you forever. That's your ride or die audience. That's what you have. Like you said, oh, I'm not big. Oh, I don't have a big channel. Like, but the people that are with you freaking love you and like will follow you
your
anywhere.
percent of bots is very low. My percent
Your
of bots is incredibly high.
The bot, they'll follow you nowhere.
Yeah, well, maybe that I responded to that one, so she might be along for the long haul.
She's in.
She is following you.
Yeah, no,
I
I appreciate that. That's that's why I'm there. I think it's so important to people. The last thing I want is for people to look at my life living on the road and romanticize it and just think that it's this constant, butterfly riding on a unicorn fairy tale life. Because if you look at, I think so many societal issues these days are especially with younger people and women especially. Comparison is the thief of joy. It really is. Yeah. And when people that have a platform paint their lives as this picture perfect, and everything is great, I'm beautiful, the sun shines, and I can eat a quart of ice cream and not gain a pound, like that is not real. It's not. Each and every one of us has a certain level of brokenness and failure that we deal with, and that's part of what builds our character and makes us who we are. And if I were to only showcase, all of my achievements and accomplishments and the ups in my life, I mean, how real is that? Like, how true am I being to the people who are with me in all of this? I think it's so important to showcase, like, I literally went into a bathroom the other day and had the toilet paper, and it was the greatest moment of my life because I realized how crappy RV toilet paper is. Like, I haven't shaved my legs in 2 weeks because we don't have any hot water. So like, it's that stuff. Or I sat in a bank and about broke a rod because I had the worst tournament of my life and I just fished like crap and I feel like I don't even belong here. That type of stuff is important to share with people because it's real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, that's the type of content I look for. I know that's what Paul looks for. And anytime I see the content that's super inauthentic and fake, I just cringe and run away. Like, that is not what I would ever want to follow. I want to see the real stuff like that because, I mean, don't we all love a little drama? like drama.
Yeah, people kind of feed off of it, right? It is what it is, and there's teaching points in that.
Oh yeah.
Because I've definitely had some really tough things happen in my life, and over the last few years, for sure, there's been some really hard things and things that I have to battle with, and I've been pretty fortunate that throughout most of my life, I've maintained a very positive disposition regardless of circumstances. And, I can have, AJ will always, kind of lifts me up about this, because when stuff hits the fan, I'm always pretty positive, and very laid back, go with the flow. We're going to make it work. And, I think it's when you have those battles in life, this whole life is really about how you come out of these battles, right? How you come out against the oppositions and all these things that are trying to stop you from reaching your full potential. And I think there's a lot of lessons there for us, is how we handle them, and how we get better, and how we change the way we look at life. We may not be where we want to be right now, but it's all about the journey. And there's so much truth to that. One of these days I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be great.
You need to.
I'm just like, you could just delete all the stuff that we're talking about, and I think you're halfway there.
Cut us out. You got a quarter of an audiobook right there.
No, you guys, the questions have been some of the most invigorating questions that I've had. And granted, I haven't done podcasts in a while. I've taken a little hiatus from them, but these have been great questions. Really.
Well, we're glad to be the first ones back, and tell all your friends, because this is what we're all about.
Yeah, I love it. The questions have been really they're great.
Well, I have a couple more if you still have time, because there's one area that we haven't covered, and I know I'm gonna get to maybe your favorite part. This is probably close to your favorite part, but I want to talk a little bit about. We talked about life on the road, and being like this is like the thing that you're chasing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about like how has the kayak fishing scene become the life versus the boat scene? I know that may change at some point. Like you might be like Jordan, you'd be like, look, I'm this good at basketball, but what if I was this good at baseball, right? It could happen. But what is it about like the group of people, the atmosphere, the life on the road, that kind of keeps you in like the kayak bass fishing scene?
Well, I think people hear me talk about this and reference our community often in my posts and throughout my writing. Initially why I got into the kayak thing, I knew I wanted to compete. I felt like the only way to truly set myself apart from the hundreds of thousands of other anglers out there was by fishing tournaments and proving that I could win them. And I was, I could put myself against the best and do well. Well, I didn't have the money at the time to buy a Ranger or anything like that, and put $5,000 up for the Bass Opens. And I was sure as hell not going to be a co-angler. I cannot do that. I'm not wired like that. So I said, okay, I'm going to get a kayak, and I'm going to start competing in these little grassroots trails, and then I'm going to work my way up and start fishing the national stuff. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then once I started getting into it, I absolutely fell in love with the camaraderie and the atmosphere and the people. We truly have the best people. You go to even these big, I'll call them high dollar for us, because they are, high competition, big dollar events, the national tournaments, and it's nothing like the cutthroat, just stab you in the back type of stuff that sometimes you get in I think the bass boat world. You'll have some of the very best of us sitting around a campfire the night before the tournament talking about what we're catching them on, our specific pattern, and even a lot of times where. Like I'll know where 5 or 6 of the best guys are fishing before the tournament. All the time, I know exactly where they are. Wow. A lot of the times, and and with that respect that you don't go and fish someone else's fish or whatever, and that mutual trust and the love for helping each other and wanting to see everybody do well, and welcoming new people into the sport, and just kayak fishermen they're not about the show. There's not a lot of ego in our sport. Now, granted, there are exceptions, but for the most part, there's very little ego. Like we've got a guy right now who's actually very good friends with a lot of professional bass fishermen on both the elites and MLF. and they know, and they know he could compete at their level and beat all of them every single time. He's just that good, and instead he's fishing our stuff and kicking all of our asses all the time. So I mean, he's phenomenal, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's one of the most humble, kind people that you'll ever meet. He'll help anybody out. I mean, during a tournament, you got someone in trouble, every single person competing would drop during the competition, run and help him out. It truly is a huge family. And how can I, as much as like, I do eventually want to fish the opens, and I want to, move over and do that because I think it's the next step for me. But at the same time, I'm so torn because I have such a huge love for what I'm doing and the people. I'm all about, it's the relationships and the people, more than anything. And that might one day overrule my desire to push the needle and defy the odds and go for the fame of this being the first female who qualifies for the Eats one day. Maybe my love for what I'm doing will outweigh that. I'm not sure yet what's going to happen with that, but that's why I'm still where I'm at.
Wow. I love it. So let me ask you this. I know this is probably a question that's been out there a bunch of times, but I have to say this for our audience because I have multiple times said that I am hyper obsessive about like the night before. And for you, it's different. You're in a tournament setting and you pre-fish and you've got like 5 nights before sometimes. But, for me, like I pour through maps. I Google and do all of this digital research like constantly because we go to new water a lot more than we go to familiar water. That's just something that Jeff and I have been doing, we're in Michigan. So, we're constantly looking at different river systems at different times of the year and there's lakes everywhere. And when you're in a kayak, a puddle can be like an adventure. And so
absolutely
we're constantly going to new water. And I am like, I will go through all of my plastics the night before and remove what I'm not going to use and grab what I'm going to have. I have like my whole setup is specifically around like doing the prep work and making it as easy as possible to be as ready as possible when we go. What does like the night before tournament prep look like for you? Like, you don't have to go to like excruciating detail, but what is, from the rods to the rigging to the bait selection, like kind of how does it all come together the night before?
Well, if I have it my way, it's the night for the tournament's the easiest night I've got because I've already got everything figured out. As far as I do a lot of my work on the front end and well in advance. Like I've been looking at maps and studying for Dardanelle now for weeks, and I still have 2 weeks for that tournament. So I've got about every inch of that lake as far as contours and Google Earth covered. I've got every single ramp marked. I'll have 4 full days to practice, and during practice, I don't do a whole lot of fishing. I'll bring just a few rods and about 12 rods or so on the kayak with me, and about half of my tackle. And throughout practice, when I narrow down areas that I think are going to be potential places, I generally have a few key select patterns going on. And so then before the tournament, all I'll do is then I like to call it getting skinny. So I'll cut my rods down to like 10, maybe even less, usually about 10 though. I'll cut my plastics down to only, my high volume ones I know I'm going to be using. And I'll just do a couple grab and go boxes of tackle that I know that I'm going to be using for the tournament. And usually my rigging isn't too extreme. I'll do maybe 5 or 6 rods, but most of them are done because, like I said, I don't actually do a lot of actual fishing during practice. So if everything goes as planned and it all kind of lines up and works out, which is rare, my Fridays are great. They're pretty low key, and most of my work's already done.
I love that. So I have one very specific question because I know the boat that you're in because I have it.
Cool.
How are you? Jeff and I both are running 360s right now. How are you? How are you getting like 10 to 14 rods in one of those?
6 rods on each side, 2 in each. You guys run the 14 or the 12?
14.
We got the 14s.
Yeah. So 2 on each side, 6 and 6.
Up.
Yep.
Nice.
Use the rod sleeves. Obviously, don't just stick them straight in there. Keep them in the rod sleeves, and then you get 12. And then I'll have a couple in my H crate if I need them. But I've always double up, so I get 12 horizontally, and in practice I may have a couple back behind me in the H crate.
Yeah.
But for a tournament, I never really want to have more than 12 for a tournament.
Too many options.
Wow.
Most definitely, yeah.
That's amazing. Quick tangent, because we have the same boat. Can I just say that you kind of turned us both on to this boat, and also we watched your video where you like walked the entire boat.
Oh yeah.
I showed
Yeah.
Paul, you were like, you were deep in this pocket, like there's trees everywhere, and you just like walked out on front and just stood there and fished. And can I also just say that we tried that, and that doesn't work as well.
If they just had a
Really?
steel reinforced cap for the front cover, it would probably work just fine.
Mainly that, like Paul has legitimately stood on the front, but I weigh
Yeah.
like 30 pounds more than Paul, so I have not just, just yet.
Yeah, I always get kind of leery when I tell people that you can do that. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like a buck 40 and
Oh.
almost 6 foot tall, and I've got decent balance. So maybe
You
not
can't-
everybody can do that.
It's absolutely possible. I actually prefer to eat this is my favorite hashtag that I'm trying to make. This is like fetch for me. I am hashtag boat snacks. I eat my boat snacks sitting on the front hatch. It's like my favorite thing to do now.
No, I don't have to try that. That's kind of a good little idea.
You get a little table. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Paul
I bet.
Paul likes to sit.
Are you guys enjoying that boat?
Oh yeah,
Oh, dude,
Yep.
it's a
It's the
problem.
best, isn't it? It
Every
really
episode
is.
devolves into us being like, so you shouldn't have bought what you bought. You should have bought a Hobie 360. Like, it's
Oh,
bad.
that's great. Yeah, gosh, they are truly the best for everything. Rivers and big water, and I love my boat. It is
Yeah.
the best out there.
I gotta say, like the 360 versus I had a PA 12 180 from like
Mhm.
2019. The 360 is like just infinitely better, which is insane to think.
It is. But here's the thing, if you didn't go to the 360, you wouldn't know what you were missing. And so
Yeah.
technically you'd be okay. You just can't ever get in one.
Oh yeah, no, it broke me, but it broke me because I watched like their debut. Basically, I bought my the PA 12 right before the 360 came out. I got
Oh,
it
dang
3 months
it.
before, and I swear, like Paul saw the man tears come down my face. I was like, "Are you
No.
joking me right now?" And then they dropped the 360, and I was like, "Fine, I have to do this." But I fished the 12 for what a little over a year, and then I decided I was going to upgrade. Then Paul was going to upgrade. Then we just like did this whole big thing. We both bought the boats and sold our old boat. But yeah, like watching that commercial that they had, and then watching like you fish and a few other people we follow on YouTube like fish. I was like, I don't have a choice. I have to
have
get
to.
this boat. There's no way I could have not done this.
Yeah. And then once you get it, it looks like the light bulb clicks. And you're like, oh, this is
It's
why
one-
it's.
It's
Yeah.
one of those few financial decisions that I've like where you like went above and beyond, and I was like, this was absolutely the right choice. I do
Yeah.
not have any buyer's remorse at all.
No, that's so good to hear. Yeah, well, I mean, and that's what I hear from a lot of people that get that boat. It's like, why, if you want to kayak fish, like we're already subjecting ourselves to so much more work than boaters. Like,
Yep.
why not go get the best you can get?
Oh,
It's-
absolutely.
It's such a step up.
Make it easy
All right.
on yourself.
So
Yeah, personal
speaking of,
bass
oh, go
boat.
ahead. Yeah, for sure. So speaking of boat snacks, this is a question I ask everybody. Well, I don't even know if you take snacks with you or not. I'm just assuming because you're a human that you always bring food with you wherever you go, like me. What is if you could like what is your snack of choice like during a tournament?
Oh, I don't eat during a tournament.
At
I was
all.
gonna say, I was like,
No.
I've seen
Oh,
your
no.
posts.
No, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, you don't even drink
No.
water sometimes. I've
No,
seen.
sometimes I don't. I've tried to get better about that because I do get those dehydration headaches that last,
Oh,
and
yeah.
those are awful. So and now, granted, I need to be eating during tournament, but I can't. In my mind, I just can't take a few seconds to do that. I just don't. I don't even think about it.
Why
But
don't
now,
you get
go
like a
ahead.
hydration pack? Just
It
wear like
adds
a
weight, and I don't want to deal with that. You know.
just a little one,
Oh,
like a little
Lord.
Yeah.
camelback.
Yeah, I know. No.
Next level dedication.
Yeah. But I really do like peanut butter banana sandwiches.
Oh, that's awesome.
With
That's a
honey or
great
without?
boat snack.
What's that?
With honey or without?
Oh, with. Oh my gosh. Honey, if I can
Yes.
get honey and sea salt and cinnamon, I'll sprinkle some cinnamon on there too. Try that. Toast the bread, do peanut butter mixed with honey, then slice banana, and then sea salt and sprinkle cinnamon, and it's freaking awesome.
It's the only time I'm bringing banana on my boat for sure.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
awesome.
So one of my last questions. You have 1,000 jobs between the writing, the YouTube, the tournament fishing itself, the obviously managing your finances and like kind of like everything pushing you towards like your end goal, which is like to be more successful at what you're doing. It's the like your sponsor work. There's like 25 jobs that you have to like juggle at all times, and you're doing it all from like a truck. So like if there was one thing that you could be like, if I could hire somebody to do this thing and I would not have to do it and I could trust them to do it, what would that one thing be?
Honestly,
don't say fish the tournament.
No, that's my
No way.
favorite thing to do. Honestly, probably, let's see here. That's kind of a tough one. I would say do all my posting on social and
Yes.
engage, but that probably that, because I truly, I'm not a scroller. I don't really like to be on social media very much, and I think it can get so addicting that a lot of time if I didn't have to post and do that to kind of maintain it, I wouldn't be on it. So maybe having someone just to post for me and to be like, if I could have a double me, because I still want people I still want someone to engage with people, but as me, I need just two of me, and one person to do that, one person to do everything else.
It's so hard. I feel that because I like deleted Facebook like 10 or 15 years ago, and I had like the only social media I had was like Snapchat, and that was because it's like I didn't have to text a picture to my friends, like and like recently, because of the work that Jeff and I have been doing, like I picked up Instagram very recently, and like I'm at some point gonna have to get a Facebook again, which is making me sick to my stomach because I don't enjoy it at all. But at the same time, there's some really great things about it. And like to your point, you're like, I want to interact with the people who you're trying to, who are
inspire.
you're having like a positive impact, and like you want to do that, but you like don't want to go into the swamp to do it.
Yes, that was the most beautiful and brilliant way I've ever heard that word. Like I want to, my DMs are a very scary place, and I get hundreds and hundreds of direct messages a week, and I can't even begin to try to get through them. Every once in a while I go in there and I'll find one really great one, and then I'll find 5 that are like creepy and make me really second guess why I'm at the boat ramps by myself. So it's like I can't ever get through all those messages. There's probably some in there I haven't seen that are just great, and I wish I could get to. It's just but it's like, gosh, do I want to subject myself to the rest of it?
Right.
Oh, for sure. And it's a time suck. And when when time is one of the most valuable assets you have in terms, especially in the summer, right? Like tournament season. Not only can it be like, can it be like you have to like keep your mental defense up for so long and like actively remain positive in order to do it well. But like I can totally see how that is. It can drain you in such a big way that it just like can beat you up when you really need to be like resting, recuperating, staying positive, like getting after it like every single day.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can be draining on every capacity.
So here's my kind of last question. We know you like to bass fish, but we know there's other things out there that you like to do. Like I'm not even talking about like the hiking and the camping and like all the fun stuff, but like in terms of fishing, because we are a fishing podcast, we want to get technical about it. What are your
technical?
Where does bass rank in your like list of like species to target?
Smallmouth bass specifically have really moved up, and I'd probably put them in my top 3, which is huge. Wow. Largemouth probably don't make my top 5. Oof. But I fish for all kinds. I fish for all kinds of things, like all over the world. So it's tough. Like, it's what I do now for tournaments, and so they kind of, unfortunately, I've been a little jaded with bass fishing. Smallmouth are just a different animal, so I've really enjoyed targeting them specifically. for fun. Like I said, I had a whole vacation and I only spent a couple days musky fishing and I was smallmouth fishing the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So they're up there. Largemouth's probably just shy of my top 5. They're still fun. It's just, not my favorite.
Right.
So
That's
what's
awesome.
number one? What's number one then?
Yes.
Who takes top spot? Oh,
Muskie,
yes.
hands down. Yeah, without a doubt.
So the gale force winds, always the rain, always the cold, and preferably shoulder busting day.
Oh yeah, what is it, a masochist? Is that what I am?
Oh yeah.
That's for 100%. Like love the emotional, mental, physical, just agony. I keep going back for it.
I gotta say, like, one of my favorite posts or videos you put up was about your frustration sometimes with musky fishing.
Oh, that little video.
Yes, that was so good. I was like, this, not even just for musky fishing, but for like all the fishing for me mostly.
Yeah.
But like when I have frustrating days, like I just picture that. I'm like, dude, how upset can you get? It like it's if they're not just doing what they're supposed to be doing and getting on your hook right now, like it can be so frustrating. It's such a mental grind. That's awesome.
It really is. It is. That's why I love them. That's the one thing that I just was filming with Pete Mania this last Friday up north. And he's obviously a muskie legend and had one of the first TV shows for muskie fishing back in the day. And we were talking about it, and I was like, Pete, why? I'm looking into my future right now fishing with him because he's a freaking maniac and just wired like that. And I'm like, Pete, like, why? What makes us like keep coming back to this? And the only thing I could really think of is that, muskie is the one fish that I've probably caught 100 in my life or more and had hundreds of follows, but it doesn't matter. Every time a fish hones in on that bait, I get that like weak in the knees, like excited, like shaking, like screaming feeling, and nothing else really. I'm an adrenaline junkie, textbook adrenaline junkie, and muskie kind of curbs that for me. So I guess that's why. And some people are wired like that, and I am.
That's awesome.
That is, I'm gonna be honest, that is the best way to put a bow on things, because I think at the end of the day, we talked about all of the things, like the kind of why people gravitate towards you and why your messages can be so unique. But I think, what has made this conversation great, what makes your social media so compelling, and really what draws sponsors to you, and obviously what has made you successful is that you're wired differently in it. And I think it's phenomenal. I am absolutely a fanboy, like Jeff said. Love the content that you're putting out there. I think it's so positive. So with that, unless there's anything you want to share, I just want to say thank you so much, obviously, for giving us a ton of your time tonight. But for just being a great person. I'm just really appreciate, everything that you're trying to do and approaching it in a way that is very unique in such a positive way. I wish it wasn't as unique, but it is, and it's great. So thank you very much.
No, I really appreciate you guys. It was totally my pleasure to be here, and I feel very, very grateful to be a part of it and be a guest on the show. And you guys had some very compelling questions, and it was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
We appreciate it so much. Thank you for giving us the time. I know your schedule like miraculously like opened up at this time, and it timed out
so nice.
It's funny, like it timed out as serendipitous to an extent. Like it came at a time when our guy that's helping us produce, our guy behind the curtain, if you will, helping us produce the podcast, because we don't know anything about technical stuff. He's like on vacation right now, and Paul and I were like, "What do we do for the podcast?" And you messaged me like that day. And
that's so cool.
We were on just after a live talking on Skype still, and I just like jumped out of my chair and freaked out. So I just want to put that out there. But I
appreciate that.
It's been so awesome having you. Real quick, where should people be following you right now? If you have any handles or want to do any shameless plugs, this would be the time.
Ooh, I'm a big fan of shameless plugs. Well, I obviously you guys mentioned my Instagram. That's where I do most of my stuff. I share a little excerpt from my writing. Thank you to all those who endure my long-winded posts. That's Midwest Fisher Gal. I had my YouTube's just over a year old now, and I put all my tournament videos on there when I feel like I've got time to do that. And I think that's just Kristine Fischer on that. That's really all I do are those. And I do have a Facebook that I'll share some things to as well. And I think that's just Kristine Fischer again.
Awesome. All right. Well, listeners, please go follow. If you've listened to this episode this far, you know that you have to follow. Why would you not do that? So yeah, go check out Kristine Fischer. Kristine, thank you so much for your time today. That's all we got for you guys right now. So on our side of things, be sure to subscribe to Burly Fishing Podcast. Go check out our YouTube channel. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and you can follow Paul over on his Instagram, Paul_J_glass. And we'll catch you guys out on the water. Hey there, thank you so much for watching the video today. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to click this circle wherever it is right here to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to watch more videos or check out a playlist from me, you can check out this video over here, this general area, or this video over here. So you got lots of options.